Hey, what's up? It's everyone. It's Larry the Batman fan here, and I'm back with another video today. Today we're going to be talking about the top 15 best Super Nintendo games. It was a little tough for me to compile or put together a list rather, so I decided to write it down on this book that I have here, scrapbook. So I'm going to be reading off this list, but I'm also going to be talking to y'all. Of course, it's a no-brainer that Mario is going to make the top list because Mario is fun. But there were a few duds that were in the way that I'm not putting on the list, such as Mario is Missing, Mario's Time Machine, and also Mario Fun with Letters, I believe is what it was called. Those games all suck. They're all educational games, so they're not really that good. So I will not be putting those on my list. So without further ado, the first game on our list for number one is no brainer. It's Super Mario World. It's a very fun game. It's excellent. It's a great platforming game. It really was a great packing game for the Super Nintendo. Sadly, I didn't get to experience the Super Nintendo that is, when I was a little kid. It came out the year I was born, and I just didn't experience it. I played the NES, and then after that I went straight to N64, and PlayStation 2 and Xbox. I played the GameCube at a friend's house. A couple of my friends had a GameCube. But later on in life, as I got older, I had money, so I actually did get to play some Super Nintendo. And I think Super Mario World is one of the greatest games on the system. Number two is Super Mario RPG. You basically take Mario, you turn the game into an RPG, and people are just amazed that they actually were able, Nintendo, to make Mario into an RPG game, and it actually was pretty fun. And it really is a good game. It's very challenging though. And in the game you have one friend that joins you on your quest. Eventually, you get other friends that join your quest, but you start off with just Mario and then one other guy fighting a bunch of bad guys. The levels you attack, then they attack you. So it's kind of like I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say action RPG. I'd say it is a turn-based RPG. But I'm sure some people would disagree with me and say that it is a action RPG because in the hub world, you're it kind of feels and plays a bit more like an action RPG, but it really isn't. I consider it more turn-based, or if you don't like that answer, just call it an RPG, because I feel like I'm confusing y'all. But you have to see the gameplay to know what the hell I'm talking about. But it is a great game. Number three is not going to be Super Mario Kart. Yeah, the first Super Mario Kart is a good game, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely not in my top three. The second Mario game, the racing game, Mario Kart 64, that is in my top three on N64. The Super Nintendo version's good, but it just doesn't make the top three. It was missing something, so it couldn't make the top three. So number three for me is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. That game is so freaking good. Like, so good, man. Such a great adventure RPG game. Just mind blowing. Everything about the game was just a masterpiece. The level design, the levels that you explore in the caves, the enemies you fight, enemies you kill. Just everything about the game is pretty damn good. And it's highly recommended. And a lot of collectors out there know how good The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is because it really is that good of a game. Okay, now moving on. Donkey Kong Country. No brainer right there. I mean, Donkey Kong has been such a good series, even back on the NES games. I do admit, or I will admit rather, that the Atari port of Donkey Kong was a piss poor port. I've played that on the Atari 2600. It doesn't look good at all. By today's standards, it sucks. The game was was better actually on the Intellivision, but it still didn't look like the arcade version. Honestly, the arcade version looked best on the NES out of all of them compared to the Atari or the Intellivision versions. But besides that, you didn't really get much else until Super Nintendo came in and really changed Donkey Kong, because before that you just had the NES Donkey Kong game, which was alright. And then you had the Atari version of Donkey Kong that was supposed to be a port of the, you know, arcade version, but it sucked ass. It looked terrible. It looked like pixelated poo poo, and Donkey Kong was purple, not, the color that he was supposed to be, which was like a brown gorilla or ape, whatever he is. The Intellivision version looked a little bit better, but still not quite what it was supposed to look like. So that's where the Super Nintendo version came in. It really changed the way Donkey Kong was looked upon because it's a great platformer. It's excellent. The level designs are excellent. It's challenging. You get to shoot yourself and Diddy Kong out of a cannon, move to another spot, shoot another cannon after that. Massive levels, probably like 40 levels in the whole damn game. It was just amazing. Impressive. And that's why a lot of collectors and people who know always put it on the list. And they're right. It's a great game. Number 5 is Star Fox. Star Fox is such a great game. I got a friend named Jim who had Star Fox as a kid. And even he knew that game was great. He had fond memories of playing that game. Of course, he had two other games. One was a football game, one was a golf game, I believe. But there's no sports games on my list usually because they don't appeal to me at all. But I will say that Star Fox definitely, for its time, the graphics were amazing and the gameplay was fun. And it really was a good flying game. There isn't a lot of flying games that I enjoy, but that and Crimson Skies for the original Xbox are excellent. I highly recommend you check out the Star Fox game on Super Nintendo. Also, it created a whole new franchise for Nintendo. I really wish they would make another Star Fox game on the Nintendo Switch. But that and F-Zero they seem to be ignoring for some reason. And I don't understand why, because they would make Nintendo a boatload of money. Hold on a second. So yeah, that's a great flying game. I recommend it. They're all great games. Now number 6 is Super Mario Kart. I felt like this was the right spot to put Super Mario Kart. Don't get me wrong, it's a great game. It's a lot of fun. The multiplayer in the game was fun. But the graphics didn't hold up too well. They actually look kind of there now, if you know what I mean. But the tracks are fun and everything, and throwing green and red shells and blue shells at your enemy. I actually don't think there were blue shells in it, but throwing like green and red shells at your enemies was a blast. Trying to get in first place, take the lead and whatnot. The game can be beat within like 4 or 5 hours, to be honest. If you're that much of a game expert, you could beat that and end up in first place for each 4 or 5 levels of the worlds. But after that, it's just a multiplayer with a friend, and you could have a blast playing that. So it was good that they added that into that game. But I just felt like maybe it should have had a few more levels. Maybe it could have been a little bit more in depth. But other than that, that game is great. It's still a great game for Super Nintendo. Definitely worth checking out. At number 7, y'all know that I'm a big Batman fan, hence the name of my YouTube channel. And there were a couple of Batman games on the Super Nintendo. Batman Forever is not on the list though because that game was trash. I played that. That game sucked. So we're gonna put Batman Returns up there at number 7. Batman Returns is a fun game on Super Nintendo. The Genesis version wasn't really that great. Neither was the NES version. But the Super Nintendo version, they nailed it. They made it into a beat 'em up, side-scrolling beat 'em up game. They made it fun, and it actually worked. And it was a great game based off a great movie. Number 8 is Mega Man X. I mean, no brainer right there. That's a great game. Number 9 is Contra 3, The Alien Wars. The only reason I have it at number 9 is because that game is ridiculously hard, and you only got like 3 lives. And if you die 3 times, game over. Even if you make it to the next level, you go back to the beginning of the game, which is so frustrating. But despite that, it kicks ass. It's a really great Contra game, and I highly recommend it. I wish they had kept the Konami 50 lives code for Contra 3, but some stupid reason they got rid of it. I don't know why they did, but they shouldn't have, because it really was fun. Number 10 is Legend of Gaia, or Gaia, however you pronounce it. That's a good RPG game. I do recommend that game. That game's fun. I do think that y'all should check that out. That's definitely underrated. Okay, so now we're gonna flip it. We're adding some games on here that you guys may or may not have heard of for the last 5. We'll also add some honorable mentions. So here we go. Clay Fighter 2, or let me do the voice impression. Clay Fighter 2, Judgment Clay. That was a good fighting game. I mean, made clay animation guys fight against each other. Now, I will say that the most interesting characters is probably Bad Mr. Frosty and Hoppy. But the rest of the characters, they suck. They're not really that interesting. Goo Goo and all these other crap characters. This dude that looks like this, like, piece of wood that, like, well, bitch slap somebody or something in the game. None of the other characters really were interesting to me. I can see why Clay Fighter died off. I know Clay Fighter Sculptures Cut is a pretty rare game now for N64. But yeah, Clay Fighter and Clay Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo. I almost said NES. What the hell was I thinking? On Super Nintendo were excellent games, and I highly recommend them. Next would be Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat's a great game. Really caused the fighting genre to, stand out at the time because they had a lot of fighting games that were, complete crap, like Shaq Fu and, games like Time Killers that sucked, that were not very good. But Mortal Kombat was a great series that just kept going and going and going and going, and it proved that fighting games could be done right as long as they were fair and balanced. And that's what Mortal Kombat did. It made it a very fair and balanced game. And of all 4 of them that were on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, I like the first one the best. Next is Super Street Fighter 2. I know there were a couple versions of that. Love playing as that dude that throws his hands. Dhalsim, I think is his name. Yeah, he's easy to whoop ass with. And Ryu is cool too. And the other dude, that army dude, I forget his name, but y'all know what I'm talking about. And then the last 2, we're gonna say Super Smash TV. That game's fun. It's like a shooting game where you just kill people. You're on a game show and you shoot everything in sight. That game's a blast. You could also get that game on the Midway Arcade Treasures if you wanted to, and that's fun. And then Monopoly, and The interesting thing with that game versus the Sega Genesis version, you can actually set your own character to have like $3,000 and then give like the computer like $1 and see if the computer actually lasts, which was amazing. That was a nice little cheat that you could do in the game. You couldn't do that in the Sega Genesis version, so that was a nice plus for that game. Um, some honorable mentions: Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong Country 3, Super Contra 4, or Super Castlevania 4, rather, sorry. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Battletoads versus Double Dragon, um, Michael Andretti IndyCar Racing, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, World of Heroes, and Mario All Stars, and also RoboCop versus the Terminator, and Lethal Enforcers, and NBA Live 96. Yeah, you're probably surprised why they put a sports game up there. I just remember playing that game when I was bored and actually being a pretty fun basketball game. So don't hate me. I know I don't really like sports games, but that one I'm putting up there. I also can't deny that NBA Jam was also a good fighting game. Sorry. Basketball game. It was a good basketball game. That and the sequel, NBA Jam Tournament Edition. And you also can't forget the legendary Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana and Mega Man X2. So that's my list. I hope you guys enjoyed my list of top 15 Super Nintendo games along with honorable mentions. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching. God bless you all. Larry the Batman fan signing off. Peace.